Hey everyone, welcome back to the Critic-Verse for another breakdown and review of Bel-Air Season 2. Now, the first 3 episodes leaked, and I watched them without knowing they were leaked since they did the same thing in Season 1. So now we're back on schedule with the latest episode titled Don't Kill My Vibe. Now, before we get to the breakdown, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to be a part of the Critic-Verse. Now, let's get to the episode. In the first scene, Will and Carlton are awaiting Aunt Viv and Uncle Phil to hear what they could do to help with Will's punishment. Will got suspended for his actions in violating the school safety code. He wants Carlton to tell his parents about the panic attack he had during the protest. Carlton refuses and tells Will not to either. But Will promised Uncle Phil he'd look out for Carlton, who blames Will for the panic attack because Will pushed for the protest because he wanted to go against authority. Aunt Viv and Uncle Phil don't come with good news. Will is getting a 1-week suspension, but he's also being pulled from the basketball team indefinitely. But he keeps Carlton's secret. Walking out of the school, all the students are cheering for Will and he is just soaking up all the admiration. Carlton might be feeling a bit jealous, and Yasmin might not be feeling Carlton anymore. The next scene, Aunt Viv is rejecting a request for the RSVP count and revealing how hard her art show is getting to coordinate. While Will is wallowing in how his punishment will affect his future, Aunt Viv tries to reassure Will his basketball future isn't over just yet and reminds him about the AAU league. Will tells her that Uncle Phil keeps shooting it down. Will thinks Uncle Phil isn't keeping his promise to support his dreams. Just then, Uncle Phil walks in with a list of chores for Will to do while he's suspended, and Phil gave the housekeeper the day off. At school, Miss Bassett tells Carlton he's the most likely pick for the Founders Award, an award Carlton no longer thought he was up for. But Miss Bassett says Carlton's actions during the protest didn't go unnoticed. A conversation which Yasmin overhears and is not happy about. At Jazz's place, Hillary is still working on her Simply Spiked pitch, which she plans to use to get rid of H2 Ivy, and Hillary says Ivy is on a need-to-know basis, which Jazz jokes that sounds like a healthy partnership. Hillary cancels their plans for lunch for her work, suggesting dinner instead, but Jazz declines, saying his parents are coming over. Hillary wants to meet his parents, which makes Jazz pause for a second, something that Hillary notices, but Hillary wonders why it's a problem considering he knows her parents. In the next scene, Will is making his way through his list of chores when he gets a call from Doc, who already heard he got kicked off the school basketball team and suspended. And he tells Will to come by later with Uncle Phil, to which he agrees, and Doc ends the phone conversation, and the camera pans around to reveal Aunt Viv had gone and spoke to him, and she thanks Doc for accepting Will. In the next scene, Phil is weary of Jeffrey's new behavior, especially now that Jeffrey is keeping his personal business away from Phil, but Phil keeps his cool. Then we go back to school where Yasmin confronts Carlton about what she overheard Miss Bassett say to him. Carlton is confused at first, but then he rejects her theory, telling her she doesn't know the full story. But Yasmin thinks Carlton just had an agenda all his own. Next, we see Hillary is working on her pitch in Aunt Viv's art studio and says she put time aside to help her mom if she needs it. Viv wonders if she's making time for her personal life as well. Aunt Viv asks Hillary how things are going with Jazz, and Hillary thinks her mom has an agenda by asking that question, but Viv insists that she likes Jazz. Because he owns his own business, he's very mature, and he treats Hillary well. But he still isn't the typical guy that Hillary usually dates. Hillary says that yes, Jazz is different from the guys she usually dates, but that it's a good different. And Viv says his parents are gonna love her, but she still looks worried. In the next scene, Will goes to Uncle Phil's office and gives him an update about his progress on the chores, but hangs around and Phil can sense that he wants to say more. Will then talks to Uncle Phil about Doc's offer with the basketball program in the AAU league. And Uncle Phil agrees to come check it out. Next, we go to the Zenith group where the AAU league is held at. Doc is giving Will and Uncle Phil a tour while also giving his best sales pitch, even though Will already bought it. Uncle Phil is a little hesitant because of the fees. Doc jokes about giving Phil an application for the financial aid program, which Will laughs at as well. Doc says that they can talk numbers first, and Uncle Phil agrees but says Will should sit this part out. Doc suggests Will try out their barber and get his fade tightened. Will jokes how impossible that is. In the next scene, Lisa and Carlton are talking about how Will's punishment is a little unfair, and Carlton is a little salty about all the love Will is getting, and Lisa picks up on that. She asks Carlton if he wants to talk about the panic attack he had during the protests, but they get cut off when Drew asks Lisa if she's coming to the BSU hangout later. But neither he or Yasmin say anything to Carlton, and Lisa can just tell from the stare Carlton is getting from Yasmin. Lisa tells Carlton to tell Yasmin about what really happened because women like communication, but Carlton believes it will just lead to another girl pitying him while dating him. Back at the Zenith facility, Will is getting his fade tightened, and even he admits the cut is crispy. And then Jackie shows up. Turns out she works there as a part-time job, considering Doc is her uncle. She brings up his suspension and asks what he did, and he talks about the protest, and Jackie takes his side, and that he shouldn't be punished for standing up for the culture. Will figures since Jackie has been looking into him, he should start to learn more about her. But she says that she doesn't let people in too fast, and Will wants to be the exception. Doc and Uncle Phil go over the contract, and Phil can't figure out what Doc gets out of it. That's not just a sales tactic. Doc says that kids in his program make upwards of $80,000 before college, and he gets a cut, but they make more. Which still makes Phil hesitate even more. Doc says he doesn't want to change Will, just amplify what's already there. And Phil also remarks that Doc also wants a percentage from any NIL deals and contracts in perpetuity, which means forever. Doc gets upset with Phil, pressing him about the details, especially since Will now needs his help after being cut from the basketball team and Aunt Viv going to Doc asking him to call Will. This upsets Phil and they leave without even telling Will what's going on. But this upsets Will, who believes Uncle Phil is just being a snob about this. Back at the house, Ashley is tossing all of her activist material in the trash when Will walks out onto the patio, asking her why she's doing this, and she says she doesn't need it because activism doesn't help. It didn't help Miss Hughes, and it even got Will in further trouble. And Will doesn't know what to tell her because it honestly hasn't worked out. In the next scene, Phil and Viv are arguing with each other, and Phil isn't handling it in the best way. Viv can't understand what Phil has against Doc, and Phil says that Doc has this hook in Will that he doesn't like. But Viv says his controlling nature will continue to push away Will. Phil expresses that Doc is his main concern with Will joining the basketball team, and that his hooks into Will just push him back into the person he used to be, as we can already see in the past couple episodes that Will reverting to West Philly Will hasn't been the best for him in terms of his school situation or even with former relationships. In the next scene, Will goes to Carlton's room asking him about school since he's been suspended, and Carlton has said his experience has been terrible, and then throws the question back at Will, who jokes about having to wash Carlton's Gucci underwear, and Carlton says those are supposed to be dry cleaned. Carlton then thanks Will for not telling his parents about his panic attack, saying that they'll just put him on stronger meds. But Will is also just still upset about the Doc situation, but puts it behind him and tells Carlton to come with him to the BSU party. Carlton talks about his black card being revoked since he choked at the protest, but once Will tells him it's a bowling party, completely changes his mind. Next, we head to the bowling alley. Will and Carlton are greeted by a lot of people, which shows that Carlton that he hasn't been as ostracized as he believes. And Will says his bag might get him kicked out. Carlton turns out to be an avid bowler as he comes with his own embroidered bag, his own bowling ball, and his own shoes. Back at the Banks house, Phil comes in and apologizes to Viv for his overreaction. Says it wasn't all about her, and then goes on to elaborate about his situation with his old partner from work, how Doc has just been bugging him, and how he can't figure out what Jeffrey is up to. Viv tries to comfort Phil and also assures him that not everyone is out to get him and advises him to deal with one issue at a time. At Jazz's place, Jazz is talking to his parents before they meet Hillary, making sure they're on their best behavior, especially his mother, who resents the comment and asks why just her. And Jazz has a feeling, especially since Hillary is a more modern woman, that there'll be some issues. But Hillary shows up practicing the faith, wearing a hijab, and giving both of his parents the traditional greeting. And as she sits down, they both congratulate Jazz because they're buying Hillary's act. Back to the bowling alley, Carlton is teaching Will how to bowl, and Will believes that since he is already an athlete, bowling shouldn't be a challenge. He then goes for his first bowl and gets a perfect gutter ball. Carlton then gets a strike on his first roll, and then we get a hilarious montage of Will constantly getting gutter ball, trying multiple ways to throw the ball down the lane. Until Carlton has him use the children's aiming equipment and he gets his first strike. It's really funny to see how Jabari Banks mimics Will Smith's facial patterns and cues in this scene. Will then goes to talk to Lisa. They kind of flirt a little bit, make some jokes showing that they're still close, but feels awkward at Drew eyeing him just for talking to her. Lisa says they just drove there together, and Drew interjects by bringing Lisa a drink. Will gets a text from Jackie and practically bolts out of there, but not before he tells Carlton he's leaving, who gives him the go-ahead saying he'll be fine on his own. In Phil's office, Phil asks Jeffrey if he's happy there, and Jeffrey responds with he's just doing his job, kind of shutting down the close relationship they had, especially how it ended up with Phil bringing his power over Jeffrey just for working for him. But Jeffrey notes Phil's old partner has been holding off-hours meetings without his knowledge. Back at the bowling alley, Carlton goes up to Yasmin to ask her to talk to him alone so he can set the record straight with her on what his actual hidden agenda was at the protest. She declines, saying she's just trying to vibe and it's her turn to bowl. Drew approaches Carlton on what he thinks he knows, and Lisa tries to stop him, but Drew keeps pushing. He tries to embarrass Carlton in front of everyone, even bringing up the fact that Carlton is the most likely pick for the Founders Award, and starts mocking him with fake applause. Drew makes a crude comment about what Carlton had to do to get that nomination, which pushes Carlton over the edge. He hits Drew and ends up beating his ass. After he beats his ass, he explains to everyone that he has anxiety, a panic disorder, and he's on meds. So he's basically drugged all the time just so he can fit in with everyone. And at the protest, he had a panic attack, which is why he couldn't speak. He takes off, and Lisa shames everyone for saying that they want to create a safe space, but just treating Carlton like shit. Lisa then goes to comfort Carlton and notes that it must be like the good old days, but reminds Carlton that he did beat Drew's ass, to which they share a laugh and he offers to give her a ride home. Will goes to meet Jackie at Zenith and catches her mid-dance routine. doing a beautiful contemporary dance number. After she's done, Will announces himself by cheering for her, and she reveals to him that she has dreams of going to Juilliard. Jackie then talks about her weekly schedule, how she works part-time, does 15 hours of dance, has a 3.8 GPA, and takes 3 AP classes, to which Will jokes that she must be an underachiever. They then talk about how Doc has this saying, no grind, no grits, no greatness, something that really sticks with Will. But he has a saying of his own, work hard, play hard. So he goes over to the stereo, puts in his phone, and turns on Sweetie's Back to the Streets, which is funny because Sweetie did make an appearance earlier in the season at Ashley's birthday party. But Jackie doesn't believe it when Will says they're close. And then the two start to dance, which Will's dancing is pretty bad. But then Jackie is sweet on it, and the two of them share a passionate kiss. Hillary goes a little bit too far at dinner with Jazz's parents, quoting so many religious facts that she probably looked up before dinner and then feels a little embarrassed when the facts start to put off his parents. At the Banks residence, Jeffrey brings Phil's partner James by to question him about all the secret meetings. Phil believes that the meetings are for a merger, but James reveals that it's actually an acquisition, which would have their firm completely taken over by a larger one. To which James puts the blame on Phil, saying that he brought in all the big clients, but James was just the guy who handled the day-to-day stuff. So when Phil left to do his DA race, they lost a lot of their big-name clients, and a lot of their best attorneys went with them. Then James tells Phil that he'd have to pull off a miracle to convince the other partners not to sell because they're all pretty much all on James's side. The next day, Will made breakfast for Phil and Viv as a part of his own sales pitch. Will talks to Carlton about the bowling alley incident and told him the BSU chat is all about the fight and the conversation about black kids and mental health. Carlton checks the chat, and a lot of other kids are talking about some of the mental health issues they're dealing with, and the BSU is talking about starting mental health workshops, all because of Carlton, which is something he can feel proud of. Phil and Viv come down to see the breakfast, and Viv already knows he's trying to sell them something. And Will promises them both that he'll work hard in school and even get a job to pay the Zenith membership himself, and Uncle Phil finally agrees. Jazz and Hillary are cuddling in bed, and Jazz asks her if she wants to talk about what happened at dinner and how she went overboard with all the Muslim Snapple facts. Jazz told her she could have just been herself, and she calls him out on the way he first reacted when she first wanted to meet his parents, to which Jazz notes that that was kind of his fault. But the two then find a way to move past it. In the next scene, Will has another heart-to-heart with Ashley and convinces her not to give up because she's the one in the family that brings them all hope. Later, Carlton is debating whether or not to delete Yasmin's text thread from his phone, but he ultimately does though. After, Will and Uncle Phil show up at Zenith with a revised version of the contract and the fee. But Doc accepts the deal, and Phil sees the quote Will said at breakfast on Doc's wall and feels uneasy. Ease. Jackie asked how'd that go, and Doc told her he's in and credits it all to Jackie. She doesn't want the credit, but Doc gives it to her anyway, and she looks displeased. Okay, this was a really fun episode. The plot is really starting to thicken as we get another good episode this week. We get to see where all the characters are heading. This episode is titled Don't Kill My Vibe, probably referring to the bowling alley scene where Yasmin says she just wants to vibe instead of talk to Carlton, and then his vibe is promptly killed by Drew's interference. A couple of thoughts on the episode. I thought it's good to start after the protest because with the scene of Will on the roof, we're wondering how they got him down, and we don't know if the security guards acted accordingly. In this episode as a whole, Ashley seems to have the smallest/weakest storyline, and it probably might be because of the actress's age and that they can't use her on set for that long. A fun little Easter egg is the actress that plays Jazz's mother on the show is the real life mother of the actor who plays Jazz. They posted a story on Instagram about how she got to act with her son, and I thought that was really sweet. One thing about the Doc storyline is that it almost feels like if it's trying to be a cult storyline, but without the religious aspect. As Phil notes about that Doc almost has like a hold on Will, but it's like because basketball is such a religion for African Americans that Doc is a part of that religion and that Zenith is a cult. Even feeling as if Doc has this ulterior motive, which it definitely seems like he does from the way that he talked to Jackie at the end of the episode. So far, Aunt Viv's storyline felt like it's been put on the back burner because after she asked Lisa to be her assistant in, like, I think the last episode, it hasn't really gone anywhere since they have to be at school, but also because like they keep referencing her storyline like in between other character storylines, like the RSVP thing while she had to talk to Will, or how she says to Hillary that she just wants to paint, but she can't do that because she has to coordinate this art show. One of the best storylines I think of this episode is Carlton's storyline with black youth and mental health. How he finally has to reveal the mental health issues that he's going with because people keep pushing him into being someone that he's not, or how people believe something about him because they don't know what he's going through. And I can't also wait to see where that story goes, especially since we see him relapse into old bad habits with some familiar faces that we actually don't want to see again. Alright everyone, that's all the thoughts I had on this week's episode. I can't wait to see where this all leads. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you all next time on the Critic-Verse.